quick tutorial on some different automated feeders you can use, especially with small fish. Here we have some tilapia that have gotten big enough where they're only getting 1 to 2 meals a day. I don't want them to grow anymore. They're at my market size for stocking out this spring, so we're just hand feeding them. Which we're feeding them a meal, so to speak, and throwing out enough feed that everybody gets some. Like I said, I don't want them necessarily to grow anymore, so we're on what we would call a maintenance diet, only feeding them so much per day so that everybody gets some. They grow very slowly at this point because they're ready for market. In order to make them grow faster, we feed them multiple meals per day, and instead of coming out here every couple hours and feeding them, we use automated feeders, and I'm going to show you some of the ones we use here at the lab. Okay, so the first feeder I'm going to show you is called a belt feeder. They come in 2 variations. They come in 4 variations. You can get this dimension of box or a little bit bigger one. And the clock mechanism, which you see here, you can either get 12-hour or 24-hour. So it depends on your needs. I generally get 24 because I want it to run about 18 hours worth of feed. We're on a kind of a daylight schedule, and 12 is insufficient for that. I buy the smaller boxes just because they're cheaper, and that's about it. Plus, you'll see later on in this video, I have them on top of a stack of concrete blocks, so the width of this sits on the block much better. It's about the same size as a block. On the other side, away from the clock, is the spring mechanism. And what the two of them do, the spring creates the tension that draws this vinyl backward, dumping the feed down through the hole over the tank. And the clock mechanism regulates how quickly that happens. Like I said, when this is pulled all the way back, it's supposed to be 24 hours. A couple tricks which you'll see out there on this. When you're loading the belt, you're trying to create meals. So instead of lining the feed up from beginning to end, you're really stacking it side to side. So this would be 1 meal, 2 meals, 3 meals, like that. The other trick is that this, when it's pulled back and loaded with feed, depending how you have it supported, sometimes the weight of the feed will literally push this all forward at once and everything fall in. Not by spring, but just by gravity, and the belt will be hanging down here. So to stop that from happening, when you pull it back, you want to put something heavy here that will keep the tension on the belt as it moves forward. So that once the feed, if all the feed's up front, won't have it flop in, the weight back here will hold it steady while the feed slowly goes in. So that and like I said, we'll see some later in the video the way they're set up on the tank. So that's a belt feeder. These are part of a system you can buy, and it's a vibrating feeder. They have different size of containers which are hanging, so you have to have some infrastructure up above to hold it. And the way this works is this magnet inside here vibrates, shakes, and the feed falls out through this slot. And if you come up close, you can see there's an adjustment here with a wing nut and a locking nut up above, so you can set the gauge of this slot for the size of particle feed you're using. And like I said, you can buy different sizes. This is for larger feed and a lot more quantities, and then this is what we use for the smaller fish with more delicate feeds, because we can really tighten this gap down. These hook up to an electric source. This attaches to this cord, and this is a regular plug that you plug into a multi-strip. The multi-strip then plugs into the back of this controller, which is basically a computer program in there that you can set the times and strength and duration of the feedings. And then this is your actual controller where you can set the thing up. So for small fish, I feed generally every 2 hours during the daylight period. And I've gotten so basically I feed 7 or 8 seconds duration with a strength of about 80 to 100%. And that is pretty much it for this vibrating feeders. A couple quick things on these. You want to make sure that this locking nut is secure, otherwise this could fall down and a bunch of feed will dump out at one time. You also want to make sure you have the cap on so nothing gets in there, and you want to suspend it a good way above the tank. When the fish are feeding, they can make a lot of splashing. It'll get this all wet. These do not like water, that's one thing. So the higher up, the better, just as long as you don't put it so close to the tank wall that half the feed goes outside the tank. So you just need to properly place it, make sure it's high enough not to get wet, and that should be good. And lock it down. Okay, and then this last one is more for a large tank system. Basically, I have a 5-gallon bucket that has the feed. This is another 5-gallon bucket with the bottom cut out, and it's just a shield. Inside we have a feeder that's run by a battery. It has a kind of like a disc that spins and throws the feed out from the center. It hits the bucket and falls into a larger tank. You can see here on the inside the hole that the feed falls through, and that's the propeller down in there that spins around and throws the feed out. It's programmable. Here's the controls in there. You can set up to 4 feedings a day. You can change the duration, and that's about it on it. There's no strength of spin or whatever. I will say there's a couple things about this. It's for large quantities of feed. You only have 4 settings, and some of the pellets are so small that we use for small fish that they'll literally fall through. The propeller can't hold them and they just spill out. So you need at least something larger than a 2.5 millimeter pellet to use this type of feeder. Okay, so this is a belt feeder in action. You can see we have it up on concrete blocks. The fish have a habit of staying right underneath it. If you want to come on over. We have the belt back for, in our case, we have a piece of heavy metal from a plumbing project in here to secure it and keep the tension on the belt. And then you can see the meals. This is one meal, this is half of the other meal. And this has been running since this morning, so we're on our 3rd meal of the day. So this is a hanging vibrating feeder. You can see the fish again are attracted to it. And I'm gonna do a test feeding, which I use to regulate how much feed's coming out before I set the thing up for multiple feedings a day. And it's 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And it should go here any second. And you can see it's dumping the feed out. And then it stops. So today we've gone over some of the automated feeders you can use for multiple feedings for small fish on a daily basis. We have the belt feeder, the vibrating feeder, and the vibrating feeder control. If you have any questions, you can always reach me at the lab and or somebody else in the Indiana Aquaculture Association.